Welcome to Module 6 in the 2021 Test Security Training Series. OSSE's Office of Assessments has developed a series of training modules to prepare LEA test coordinators for Spring 2021 statewide assessment administration. This is the last module in the Test Security Training Series. There are 6 required training modules. These modules are required for all LEA test coordinators, including those responsible for access and alternate access, MSAA, and PARC. The modules follow the order of activities in the assessment coordination timeline. Upon the completion of all training modules, LEA test coordinators will need to complete a quiz and certification form verifying that they have viewed all content. A score of 80% or higher on the quiz will serve as the official attendance and completion of the 2021 Test Security Training Series. This assessment coordination timeline shows the activities needed in order to complete statewide assessment administration in the District of Columbia. The color and shape of each icon indicate who is performing each task. Each training module provides detailed information on the activities in the assessment coordination timeline. In this module, we will cover the steps highlighted in the orange dotted lines. First thing we'll discuss is assessment closeout. The first step that we'll talk about in assessment closeout will be to collect test materials. This slide details considerations for in-person administration. After a student has indicated that they have finished testing or after the time has run out if administering a timed test, test administrators must follow the closeout protocol detailed in the assessment manual for each test. Scripted closeout instructions may be required. One thing to remind test administrators in their authorized personnel training at schools. Test administrators are not permitted to tell or ask students to check their work. Under the Test Integrity Act, asking or telling a student to check their work at any point during test administration or closeout is considered educator coaching and is a violation of test security. We call this directive out specifically in test security training every year because we find that during investigations, test administrators often tell students to check their work. If test administrators ask what phrase they can use instead of check their work, an approved phrase can be, "Are you finished and ready to close out your test?" After the student has exited a test, the test administrator must collect all testing materials and keep them in their possession until materials are returned to the secure location. After collection, test administrators may dismiss students, or students may sit quietly, read books, or complete activities not related to the assessed subject. This slide details considerations specific to remote PARC administration. After a student has indicated that they have finished testing, or after the time has run out if administering a timed test, test administrators must follow the closeout protocol detailed in the assessment manual for each test. Scripted closeout instructions may be required. One thing to remind test administrators in authorized personnel training at the schools: test administrators are not permitted to tell or ask students to check their work. Under the Test Integrity Act, asking or telling a student to check their work at any point during test administration or closeout is considered educator coaching and is a violation of test security. We call this directive out specifically in test security training every year because we find that during investigations, test administrators often tell students to check their work. If test administrators ask what phrase they can use instead of check your work, an approved phrase can be, "Are you finished and ready to close out your test?" After the student has exited a test, the test administrator must instruct students to dispose of secure materials according to the protocols established by the school or LEA. If a student finishes a test session early, After instructing the student to dispose of secure materials, the test administrator should follow procedures developed by the school or LEA for early finishers. A test security reminder. Test administrators must ensure that all secure materials are collected and in their possession prior to the student receiving any other materials or beginning any other activities. For remote park administration, test administrators should advise students and caregivers to discard or destroy used scratch paper and other materials immediately following test administration. Test administrators should, to the best of their ability, verify that secure materials were appropriately disposed of by students or caregivers. The next step in the assessment closeout activities would be to return or shred secure testing materials. For in-person testing, Access, MSAA, and some park, test administrators must return all testing materials to the secure storage location as soon as testing is over and sign a chain of custody form. The school test coordinator is responsible for securely storing all secure testing materials as soon as they are returned. The school test coordinator should review test coordinator manuals to determine which materials to shred and which materials to return to the vendor. For in-person testing, all secure materials that will not be returned to the testing vendor following test administration should be securely shredded with a witness present. For remote testing, test administrators should advise students and caretakers to discard any materials with test content immediately after test administration. Examples of test content include used scratch paper, testing tickets, or login information. For access and alternate access assessments, when returning test booklets to WIDA, any booklet that contains student response information must have either a pre-ID label or a district school label with bubbled student information. School test coordinators should refer to the test administrator manual for details on returning materials. For MSAA, at the end of MSAA testing, test coordinators should destroy secure MSAA materials. All printed materials should be collected and securely shredded. Collect and securely destroy username and password information, TIP pages, and related materials. For park in-person testing, secure and scorable materials will need to be returned to Pearson at the end of testing. Each item that must be returned will include a secure material label. Shipments from Pearson will include labels and packaging for returning secure materials. Keep these materials for use at the end of testing. Returned shipments must be sent to Pearson within 5 school days of the last day of testing. Contact UPS to schedule a pickup for your materials. Additional details about returning secure materials can be found in the Park Test Coordinator Manual. For remote testing, test coordinators should advise students and caretakers to discard any materials with test content immediately after test administration. As a reminder, if a school is not open to testing students and test administrators, no materials will be shipped to the school building. In those instances, there will not be anything to return to the testing vendor. Lastly, if the school test coordinator has any materials printed out, they should discard and or shred those materials as soon as possible. The next assessment closeout step is to close out testing in the online platforms. Some testing platforms require closeout actions at the end of the student sessions or testing window. Ensure that all steps in the testing manuals are followed for online closeout process. Access test coordinators must complete the data validation process, separate from OSSI's data validation process, in WIDA AMS at the end of testing. Tutorials on the data validation process and after testing activities are available in WIDA AMS. For MSAA, test administrators should ensure all tests have been submitted and are closed by the school test coordinator in the MSAA platform. They should also complete the accommodations after test tab in the testing platform and the end of test survey. When a park test session is complete, the session should be stopped in Pearson Access Next. This action will close that session for all students. All efforts should be made to complete makeup testing. If a student has an incomplete unit and was unable to complete testing during the makeup window, the student's unit must be marked complete and the session can be closed after the last day of testing at the school. The next step in assessment closeout is to finalize the school test security file. The school test coordinator must ensure that all required information in the school test security file is updated after test administration. Every school is required to keep the updated file in hard copy format for 4 years. We understand that it may not be possible to keep these documents in hard copy format at this time due to the reduced or no access to school buildings. So we advise that the school test coordinator keep these documents organized electronically in a folder. Once access to school buildings become available again, OSSI asks that school test coordinators be prepared to print out those documents and keep them in the binder for the next 4 years. A test security reminder. Every school must keep an updated version of the test security file in hard copy format on site for 4 years. OSSI may request to see this security file at any time within a 4-year time frame. The next step in the assessment closeout is to submit test security affidavits to OSSI. Within 10 days after the conclusion of each school's testing window, the LEA test coordinator must obtain signed affidavits from the non-public and school test coordinators for each assessment. Non-public school coordinators must sign and submit test security affidavits for every LEA to which they have tested students for every statewide assessment. Within 15 days after the conclusion of each school's testing window, the LEA test coordinator must also sign an LEA-wide affidavit and submit their affidavit and all other affidavits they've received to OSSI using the OSSI Support Tool application. If you are an LEA test coordinator and you do not have access to the OSSI Support Tool QuickBase application, please contact shannon.bell@dc.gov to gain access. An affidavit must be submitted for the LEA and school test coordinator for every assessment. If you are both the LEA and school test coordinator, please indicate that on the affidavit upon submission. The last slide covers the 5 assessment steps not related to test security or test administration. These steps primarily focus on reporting and validation, but we wanted to show them here so we cover the entire test coordination timeline. The first icon here is to complete the OSSI data validation process. This process is not managed by the assessment team. Data managers at your LEAs and schools will be contacted by OSSI's Office of the Chief Information Officer, or CIO, who will provide details about this process. One assessment data point that the CIO will ask for is for LEA test coordinators to confirm that the start and end dates for each of their school's assessments are correct in the School Test Security Plan QuickBase application. The next four icons show the typical steps in preparation for the public release of student assessment results for the year. As of January 2021, we do not know what the release process will look like or if it will occur at all. As we know more information, OSSI will communicate the steps and details with LEAs in schools. This completes Module 6 and the entire 2021 Test Security Training Module series. Please follow the link here to access the 2021 Test Security Training Quiz and Certification Form. Please remember that a score of 80% or higher must be scored in order to receive credit for completing this training series. Thank you for completing this training module series. If you have any questions about OSSI assessment policies or specific assessment programs, please feel free to reach out to the appropriate member of the OSSI assessment team.